Now that you've finished your piece of arm knitting, you might want to sew it together into a mobius strip or an infinity scarf. In this video, we're going to learn how to make a neat seam and how to weave in those pesky ends. Let's get started. All right, we are going to put our finished arm knitting fabric into an infinity scarf by sewing the two short ends together. So we're going to have the area where we cast on and the area where we bound off, and we're going to put the fabric in a loop so that the smooth side is all the way around. If I wanted a mobius strip or a mobius scarf, which simply means that the fabric has a 180-degree turn in it, instead of having the fabric in a straight loop the way I have it here, I would lay it out like this and I would turn one side over in 180 degrees. And that puts a twist in the fabric. Every time you wear it, the fabric will be twisted. But let's just do a plain infinity scarf. So I have smooth side, and I have the two edges. Okay, so I'm not going to use a tapestry needle or anything like that. I'm just going to use the strands from where I bound off my fabric. And I'm going to use the bound off tail because I made sure that that was nice and long, and we need a nice long piece of yarn to make the seam all tighten up. And the tail from the cast on, I just have that off to the side from now. I'm not going to worry about it for now. So I'm going to make sure that I have two sets of 3 yarns on either side, because if I just pull one up, then the seam is going to be kind of loosey-goosey. And I'd like to tell you that there is a big serious place that you have to pull your yarns through, but honestly, it's an art, not a science. So whatever looks good to you is probably close enough. So I have literally stuck my fingers through the 2 strands on this side and the 2 strands on this side. I'm going to grab the cut ends. I'm going to pull them all the way through. So there's my cut ends. And I'm going to pull that pretty tight. And then I'm just going to keep moving up the row. There's my next 2 on this side. My next 2 on this side. I'm going to put both fingers in. There's my cut ends. Pull my cut ends through both sides. And I'm going to do this all the way up the short edge. 2 on this side. 2 on that side. I like to lay it out flat on a table when I do this, so I make sure that I'm going up in a sort of equal on both sides, because the bind off edge is much more loose than the cast on edge. So you want to make sure you're going up at about the same rate on both sides. In the same way we talked about the cast on, we don't want to pull so tight that the seam puckers, but we also don't want it to be so loose that the 2 ends don't meet up nicely. Okay, so I'm about halfway up. Move that so you can see it. So I'm on my last stitch on both sides. And pull those cut ends all the way through. So there's my seam. It's laying nice and flat, but now I've got to get rid of these ends. So on the side that I just finished, I'm going to insert those one more time. And I'm essentially making an overhand knot to make sure that those things are nice and tight and they're not going to go anywhere. Okay, so I have that overhand knot nice and tight. You have two choices here, and I'm going to show you both ways. One, if you're feeling pretty good that that knot is pretty tight and it's not going to go anywhere and you're feeling lucky, you can just trim the ends right by the knot and call it a day. I use that technique a lot when I'm doing striping or color blocking. I want to change a lot of times. The overhand knot is more than likely going to hold. However, if you're feeling like you're worried about that your piece is going to get a lot of wear, maybe it's going to go in the washing machine a whole lot, maybe you've used a much, much thinner yarn and you're worried that it's not going to hold, I'm going to show you how to weave in each end individually by what we call splitting the plies. So the first thing is, this is my tail from the cast on. I don't need quite this much yarn. So I'm going to cut it shorter, cut it to about 10 inches so I have something easier to work with. And I'm going to use my tapestry needle. Tapestry needle has a blunt end. But honestly, anything that you have that's thick enough, that has a big enough eye that the yarn can go into is going to be just fine, because this is not a particularly precious project. With the tools that you have laying around are probably fine. All I want to do to make sure that this is going to be completely even and disappear is find a pretty long length of a strand. Now, again, if I'm doing color blocking, I want to make sure that the strand that I pick to weave in and out of is the same color as what I'm working in. Okay, so when you get yarn from the store, each one of the strands that makes up the yarn is called a ply. So this kind of finish is just called splitting the ply. So we're going to go back and forth through the yarn, and it doesn't matter where you do it. You just want to make sure it's the same color as the strand that you're working with. So we're going to go in and out just maybe 4 or 5 times. And the idea is to hide the cut end and to hide it way far away so that nobody can see it. All right, got my tail. So I want to tug on the yarn that I was weaving in and the yarn that I was weaving in to make sure that it's not puckered. We don't want it to be puckered up like that. We want it to be tight so that they're both at about the same tension. And we're going to just trim that off close. Get rid of the needle. And then where I pulled the strand out, I just want to go back and give it a quick tug so that it works itself back into the work. So there it is. But if you're wearing this and just walking around, nobody's going to really see that, and you have a nice, neat finish. And I'm going to do that with each of the other 2 strands. Again, doesn't have to be the same strand. Just pick some place that you can hide it and make sure it goes away. And I'm going to weave in and out of the plies just a couple of times. And trim. Here's my last little guys floating around over here. I find that getting my fingernail up very close to those cut ends makes it easier to get them in the needle. And let's see. Here's a strand over here. Just going to weave in and out of the strand. Trim it off. I'm going back where I was, just give everything a tug so that all the strands kind of go back to where they were. You might have pulled them out of shape a little bit. And there we go. Each individual strand is woven in tightly, and they will not pull out, and they're really hard to see. So that's it for finishing. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Don't forget, you can get more information on arm-knitting.com. And you can get the instructions for this and many, many other projects in Simple and Stylish Arm Knitting, How to Make a 30-Minute Infinity Scarf, and Other Great Projects from Design Originals. Thanks. Bye-bye.